and I had it written, and then I found what I'd originally started on, and I like what I wound up with better than what I had left behind. But it was just a story like, hey, what if dead people had driver's licenses? What would that look like? What would the world look like if you were a police officer and you saw someone, a vehicle swerving into another lane, and you had to pull that vehicle over? How would that person feel? Oh, I got to write a ticket for a dead guy again. What would that person feel like? Or what would it look like if if there was a hot dog eating contest and you got this guy who just won't stop eating and he will just consume anything that's in front of his face. And this one tries to stop him from eating and he just starts chomping off her fingers.
Oh,
so
my!
That's what it was. It's just these things that might be common under certain circumstances, but you change one thing and how all of a sudden it becomes alien.
Well, yeah, I was a stand-up comic for 20 years, and I can't tell you the number of jokes that I did that when I wrote it on paper, it was one way, and it wouldn't quite work. I couldn't quite make it work, and then suddenly I would add something or change one tiny thing, and then bam, it like all came together. The thing I remember most is I had this joke I do about how I'm a fat guy, but my favorite fat person is Buddha because he's a fat guy with his own religion. And that at one point was the end of the joke. And it would get a little chuckle and whatever, but it was never getting the laugh I wanted it to get until one night I was in Kalispell, Montana, which if you want to know where the butt end of the universe is, go to Kalispell, Montana. It's not a great place. But I was there and I was doing a show and it was really tight with the crowd, which is weird because you sometimes get tight with the crowd and sometimes you don't, and I never figured out the secret of that, but I was feeding off them, they were feeding off me, and so I did the joke, and afterwards I went, come to Buddha, because to me it was I was thinking of Butthead, come to Butthead. Whenever you see come to Butthead. And I thought it was just, okay, change Butthead to Buddha, it's going to be funny. And it was. And it made the joke rock. People loved it after that. And it was just adding that one line, that one little come to Buddha. And so...
my favorite thing about your Buddha thing was always... they changed where you rubbed it. Rubbed the statue.
Yeah, you'd rub a different part of the statue for luck. Yeah. But anyway, point being is that it's the way, writing, like changing one thing, can change everything. It can make things work that didn't work before, or it can make things not work that should work. And so, that's fascinating. One thing, though, I have to ask you, because you're like the third or fourth horror author I have spoken to that started with an anthology. And I just find it fascinating that, like, early horror writers have so much going on that they don't put it together in one book. So many of them are just like, no, I've got to do this, and then this, and then this, and then this. And yours is like a progression, so it makes sense. And my buddy Dan, who we talked to on the show, his was all about tied into this cabin. He calls cabin 187. It's like this cabin that's sitting out in the middle of the woods, but there's all this weirdness and strangeness connected with this cabin, and all of his stories tie back to it in this book in some way. So, and I was like, ooh, that's an interesting idea. So I think it's kind of interesting how certain horror authors will start with anthologies, because whether it's a better way to present their ideas, like yours is a multiple way of looking at things. Yes, a progression as you as a writer, but it's also a progression of you, like, switching this one thing out and making it a little different and changing things and making it, the hot dog guy that's not eating is a funny story until the lady goes, wait, stop. And that's the moment she goes, oh, wait, no, this isn't the way this is supposed to work. And so, I find that fascinating. And And don't take me wrong, I'm not down on anybody because I don't have a book out there, not even one of short stories. All my good book ideas eventually become characters in video games. That's it. Because that's as much effort as I put into it. But so it is something I've noticed. It kind of fascinates me. It's like, is it just that you have all this, or is it like, I know like one of Stephen King's earliest work was an anthology, but in his case it was, he'd submitted all this stuff to magazines and he was just like, this is good stuff. I'm just going to put it all in one place so people don't have to find 8 magazines to read it. So, it just could be just one of those weird coincidences, but I think it's an interesting one. So now, you got anything else you're planning on that you're working on, or?
Yeah. I found an anthology that kind of intrigued me that I'm trying to wrap up before the end of the month. But it's supposed to be modern retelling of Greek gods. It can be an original story or retelling of an existing story from Greek mythology. And I am hopefully wrapping up on a story of it's essentially if Zeus got a job and it's like he has been working in an automotive, well, it's implied, I never say that it's an automotive plant, he's working in this plant for decades and he's just a worker bee, and then one day he wakes up and is like, well, wait a minute, when he hears they're going to shut the plant down, and that's been his life for all these years. Well, where does he go from here? It's like, hey, wait a minute, I used to be a god. I'm not going to let them just put me out on the street. It's like, well, what does he do about it? And so I'm working on that, and I've had an idea rolling around in my head based on children's street games that I kind of want to do some research, because I'm like, okay, I know tag, I know freeze tag, I know red light, green light. I know there's got to be other stories. Other games. What other games are there? And I'm trying to collect other games to kind of.
Kickball was our big one when we were.
Kickball, yeah, kickball.
Kickball was a good one.
But games like that, I kind of want to work into. It's fiction. It's not like a nonfiction book, but it's working these different children's games into this kind of a. It's not that entirely makes sense yet because I haven't completely worked it out, but it's kind of a thriller thing.
But it's like Ring Around the Rosie. Like, most people don't know that song is all about the Black Death.
Yeah.
It's not.
Oh, yeah. I had heard that. Yes.
Because Ring Around the Rosie is the white ring around the red inflamed circle. That was one of the symptoms of having the Black Death. That was Ring Around the Rosie. And Ashes, Ashes, We All Fall Down was a direct reference to you're going to die and we're going to burn your body, because that's what they did. And so, like, most people don't get that. But, yeah, a friend of mine who actually went into the law field, so was planning on writing something with that, and he just never got around to it, and then he became a lawyer, and he has no time to write anything that isn't a legal brief, so. But yeah, that has always fascinated me. So kids' games. And then there's a role-playing game, because I'm a big nerd, and I played D&D and all sorts of other games growing up, called Scion. And the whole point of Scion is playing a god in the modern era, or a hero, or to recreate these characters, like, and it even suggests, like, movie people like Indiana Jones could be a scion of a Mayan deity that collected antiquities. And so he could be the modern, incarnation of this deity, and he just hasn't figured it out yet. And that's how he gets away with all the crazy stuff he gets away of, because he's got these god powers that he doesn't ever intentionally use, but the universe sort of uses on his behalf. And so that idea fascinates the heck out of me. And then, of course, so yeah. Yeah, I like the way you think. I'm just going to say that there. I like the way you think.
Okay, thank you.
You've got some stuff coming out that I'm going to read. I'm just saying. So I look forward to it. Okay, so to get back into the Men in Black bit here that we're supposed to do. Oh, wait, you know what? I need to take some time for a word from our sponsors. So everybody just give me a few seconds of silence. And we're back. Okay. So to get back to the Men in Black, the thing that gets me, and the reason, okay, here's the reason I think our society or our reality isn't entirely solid. Are you familiar with Skinwalker Ranch?
Skinwalker Range?
Ranch.
No. I can only guess that's people who put on skins to make themselves look like people, but other than that, I don't know anything. Okay, well, Skinwalker is an Indian
terminology.
Witch. Yeah, it's a Native American witch. I shouldn't say Indian. We're changing. We're trying to change that, and I'm all about positive changes. So, yeah, it's a Native American witch basically. But there's a place in Utah called Skinwalker Ranch. Now, it was originally owned by the Shermans, and this place. It's got UFOs. It's got.
We have an episode.
Yeah, we have an episode all about it. It's got poltergeist activity. It's got portals that open. This place is crazy. Like when the Shermans first moved onto the property, they saw this huge wolf, right? And so they're approaching this kid, and it's outside this pen that has these calves in it.
Animal mutilations, the whole 9 yards. It really is.
Yeah, it's a crazy place. But so they go up to this wolf. And the wolf lets them, it doesn't run away, it lets them approach, they're petting it doesn't move. Finally, it reaches its head through the bars of this little pasture that these calves are in and grabs one of the calves around its throat with the wolf's mouth. And so they're trying to stop it, and they can't get it to let go, and they begin to hit it, and it just doesn't care. So finally, the dad, Terry, goes and gets his gun and shoots the thing. Well, a big chunk of flesh flies off. It's gray. What has gray flesh? I don't know. But it's gray, right? So finally the thing lopes off. Well, they're trying to track it down. Well, the tracks go a certain ways and then they vanish, right? Crazy stuff like that happens on Skinwalker Ranch all the time. In fact, there's a series about it, which it isn't the greatest series in the world. But it's on History Channel. It's made by the same people who made Curse of Oak Island. Or it's produced by the same people, but it's a different kind of series. Anyway, long story short, we don't know what happens there, but at one point, Robert Bigelow, the guy that owns the National NIDS, is the acronym. I can't remember what it all stands for off the top of my head, but Robert Bigelow owned it at the time, and he employed the Shermans as basically ranch managers to keep an eye on the livestock. That was their only job. Otherwise, the place was full of scientists and technical equipment and these people that were trying to figure out what was going on at Skinwalker Ranch. Well, at one point, the Shermans are leaving to go shopping. Just go shopping. And as they're driving away, Terry is looking at these cows that he's got in this field, and he's like, if anything happens to those, that's it. That's the last of our money. Nothing can happen to these cows. So when they get back, of course, the cows aren't in the field. So they go and they look for them, and they find them locked in this trailer that had been, like, sealed with barbed wire that was rusted shut. It had not been opened to let these things in, yet these bulls are all in there. So they get them, they open the door. Well, as soon as they open the door, the bulls had been in this kind of weird trance-like state. Well, suddenly now they realize where they are, and it's really too small for 4 bulls to hang out. So there's just all this stress of getting these animals out of this space, and eventually they do. But, well, the pasture was being recorded by 4 different cameras, I want to say. And this may not be entirely accurate, but the events are accurate. I don't know about the individual
the timeline, yeah.
Exactly. The timeline may be off, but the events are accurate. So, well, they decide to go, when did these things go in here? How did they get in there? We don't know. Let's look at the footage. Well, in the space of a second, right? They've got pictures of cows, then it's dead. So they go and they look, and all the connecting cords have been undone. They've been untaped because they were all taped up. All the connecting cords unplugged, untaped, curled up on the equipment on the ground in a space of a second.
Wow.
So if our reality isn't at least somewhat permeable, how did that happen?